Welcome back. More story time. Here we go. Salem, 1693. Thackeray jolted awake to the sound of Mopsy whining like he'd been kicked. He sat up straight, a layer of sweat sticking his pale linen shirt to his back, and let his ears adjust to the commotion outside the window. The sun was high. He must have slept through the cock crowing, which meant his father would be angry because he hadn't yet milked the cow. Thackeray flopped back into bed, wondering whether he could plead sick. He glanced to his left, hoping he could ask Emily, hoping he could ask Emily to cover for him. But her bed was empty and unmade. Her church dress still hung by the fire, as did her gabled cap. Thackeray hurried out of bed and looked about the small plain bedroom they shared at the back of the house. Emily's shoes were by the door, which was very unlike her. He sniffed the air, but couldn't catch the smell of wood smoke. That would mean his mother was preparing porridge in the main part of the house. Nor could he hear the good-natured sound of his father greeting neighbors as they passed by the way from the harbor. Something wasn't right. He dashed into the yard, where the chickens were scrambling as if they knew it was time for supper. Mopsy had torn herself from the tree, and his lead hung limp and ominous from a upper branch. A shiver crept down Thackeray's spine. From the gate of the sheep's pen, Thackeray spotted Elijah Morris, his best friend, who was rubbing his eyes as if he'd risen as well. "Elijah," he called, forgetting his own shoes as he crossed between their yards. When Thackeray grabbed Elijah's forearm, his friend turned to him, blinking as if coming out of a dream. Elijah was only a hair's width taller than Thackeray. At least that's what Thackeray said, and wore an identical linen shirt and long locked hairstyle. The townsfolk called the two of them accidental twins. "Has thee seen my sister, Emily?" said Thackeray. "Nah," said Elijah. "But look, they conjure." Thackeray followed his friend's gaze and saw far past the fields that surrounded town and deep within the Salem wood, a plume of heavy smoke crawling into the clear late morning sky. It was an unnatural shade of pink, bright and conspicuous. It made his stomach turn. "The woods," Thackeray managed, the half-dreamed ghost of witchery hands tightening around his neck. He grabbed Elijah by the shirt sleeve, and together they raced down the lane to the field. There Thackeray caught sight of his sister's frame slipping into the shadow of the trees. "Wake my father," he told Elijah, keeping his eyes trained on where his sister had just been. "Summon the others. Go." Before Elijah could answer, Thackeray was racing toward the witching wood, shouting his sister's name. He leaped over one branch and ducked beneath another, and then lost his footing and tumbled down the steep embankment until he landed in a thick bed of brown leaves. He groaned, forcing himself up onto one arm and then farther up onto his hurting bare feet. Before him stood the Sanderson house, a cottage that sat crookedly upon its hunches and sagged in its eaves. Despite being younger than many buildings in Salem proper, intricate wooden shutters obscured its windows, and weeds grew in thick drifts around the house, and even between some of the floorboards of the porch. A few sported bright blue flowers, despite the chill of October's last day. Thackeray had no doubt that these blossoms smelled and tasted like honey, but would kill a man within a few minutes. On the house's left side, a huge water wheel caught the tiny creek and turned groaning from the labor. Above it, the smoke hung thick and promised something as wicked as a snake in paradise. Emily disappeared inside as Thackeray watched, helpless, trapped by a memory of clambering down there with Elijah when both of them were 12, of daring each other to throw pebbles at the door, of his heart knocking hard against his chest when the door opened and Winifred Sanderson stepped out with her wild red hair and threatened to roast him with chicken of the woods and warm snake's tongues. Thackeray pushed aside his memories and crossed the flat stepping stone to a large window that looked into the only room of the house. Inside, the sisters were doing the devil's work, each of them wearing a heavy cape and a pointed hood, one green as leaves before the fire, one red as clay, and one a purple deeper than an elderberry's juice. Together the women danced and rocked slowly around his poor sweet sister. They seated Emily in a heavy-looking chair, and she looked patiently up at them, as if she expected a present at the end of it all. Her eyes widened when she saw Thackeray, and he hurried out of sight and shut the window. He waited no time clambering past the water wheel and ducking into an alcove just as the creak of a rusted hinge pierced the air. The high, haughty voice of Winfred Sanderson rang out above him. "Oh, look," she sighed, "another glorious morning makes me sick." The window slammed shut again, and Thackeray leaned into the stone of the old building. He was relieved not to have been caught, but it didn't help the feeling that his ribs were knotted tight with rope. Emily was trapped inside with the witches, and he had no idea what to do. Salem, 1993. Hundreds of students pressed through the halls of the high school and spilled out into the street. In the anonymity of the crowd, a couple of students popped off black and orange streamers. A boy with a dancing skeleton knitted on his beanie shouted, "What do we want?" "Ghosts," shouted back the rest of the school. "When do we want them?" "Now!" Max pushed his way through the celebrants, still baffled by their self-conscious love of something meant for little kids. He was grateful that Allison wore a bright red coat because it helped him keep track of her in the outgoing tide of students. He grabbed his bike and raced away, her slowly only becoming, he was afraid of becoming, a gross, sweaty mess. His heart was beating hard enough for what he was about to do. He was going to speak with Allison, just the two of them, and he was going to invite her to visit the Sanderson house with him. And she was going to say yes, because if she didn't, he really would have to hitchhike back to L.A., since the embarrassment of seeing her in a class every day would be too much when all of his friends were there 3,000 miles away. Max's parents and sister kept telling him to make the most of his move, and there he was, pedaling after his moonshot. As he biked, he decided he had never seen so much Halloween decor in one place, not even in the holiday section of the department store. There were homemade ghosts and plastic zombies and giant googly eyes stuck in the trees. People had even put up yellow and orange lights, and one man was testing the fog machine in his yard before the night's main event. Max swung past a honking car and into Salem Common, the big park that sat in the middle of town. "Allison," he barked before he could stop himself. He startled himself even, his foot slipping and causing him to skid to a halt. She turned and eyed him for a second before saying, "Hi." She kept walking, but she slowed a little. "Hi," he said, towering his way after her. "Look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to embarrass you in class." "You didn't?" She stopped then, and Max did too. He took a deep breath and told himself to play it cool. "My name is Max Dimension," he said, extending a hand. Allison softened. "Yeah, I know," she said, accepting his handshake. Her palm was soft and warm against his, and he thought of the intricate vase he'd seen her carrying out of the arch wing, enough to stock a mansion, because he suspected she'd keep working at it until one came out perfect. He wondered whether asking about her ceramics class would make him seem thoughtful or creepy. Okay, we're going to stop right here, guys, and we'll take up tomorrow where we leave off. I hope you guys are enjoying the story. I'm going to start trying to do at least a chapter each reading from now on, so that we can all get a little more caught and get into the book better. I just started this to see if you guys was interested in hearing stories, basically. But apparently, I have quite a few people coming and asking me about it, and had some emails. And if you have any suggestions, you're more than welcome to email me with a book you'd like to hear. Um, my email address is chosen1 and his girls, all small letters now, at yahoo.com. Um, Mama Sparling be happy to read to you. I enjoy reading and crafting and many other things, and we're going to start doing a lot more of that on this channel. Um, I seem to feel like that it's a lot better than throwing so much hate and shade out like some of these channels are doing. I'd rather spend my time doing something fun and exciting with you guys than that. So y'all have a great day, and like, share, and subscribe to Mama's channel.